I wanted to talk about Rust in curl. Of course, it's not actually Rust in curl, but it's related. So I figured it's fun to say this because people keep on saying that, right? So memory safety is apparently all the rage these days, and we have support, or there is a hyper that could potentially be used for HTTP 1 and 2 in curl. We have support for Russells for TLS, and we have Quiche for Quick, as Stefan mentioned. Quiche for Quick and HTTP 3. All these three libraries are experimental, and they're sort of components that we can use, and if we use them in theory, I'd say the idea is then, memory safetification. That, you know, the language is changing, so memory safetification, that's the word of the day. We need to use it more. So memory safetification, that's a popular thing to mention or bring up these days, and people ask us all the time, right? If you're writing curl in C, why isn't everything in Rust? And these are three libraries that we support experimentally, and so they're all experimental. Why isn't everyone using them if Rust is all the rage, right? If you want to go memory safetification, why isn't everyone jumping on the bandwagons and shipping and running curl with hyper, Russells, and Quiche all the time? Because they aren't, and no one is. So the question sort of is that then, does any of this actually help us, or does it actually help anyone at all? Memory safetification, sure, but if no one is using it, it's just, you know, code somewhere in the repo that's just a weight to carry around. So that's why I, a while ago, right, asked about should we drop hyper support from curl and just remove it and get a little bit less of a burden to carry with us, because it is a burden. All of this, I mean, I guess they're all various degrees of tiresome to bring with us, but they all add a load, right? We have to make sure they keep working, they keep, the tests keep running green and everything. So whenever we want to do something, and I think in particular Stefan has felt that recently, when we refactor things around HTTP, for example, we have to do a lot of hyper adjustments just to keep the hyper build happy. Russells maybe less so, because it's slightly more.
Apart from the API change.
Yeah, it's in the Russells case we suffer because they keep changing their API, so we have to keep changing the code, because and recently their changes has been more, not only just changing names, by introducing new concepts, and recently I couldn't even figure out what changes that needed to be done, so I just let someone else do it later. Someone else can do it. Someone else did it, but still. So and Quiche, I don't know. Quiche seems to also have, it's quick and HTTP3. I'm not even sure the Cloudflare people actually believe in it still. I don't know if they actually work on it. They seem to be there. I mean, there are good guys involved there, so nothing against them, but still, we have a lot of H3 backends. Maybe we don't need all of that. So the question is genuine. Does all of this actually help, and will anyone actually use it? So curl is in there in the middle, right? That's the core curl, and all of these orange boxes around here are different internal APIs that, they are internal APIs that abstracts the actual action behind them, and often we have a lot of different kind of libraries and backends behind those internal APIs, and I marked a few then. So we have a Rust written libraries as an alternative for HTTP code, HTTP 1 and 2. We have Rust alternatives for HTTP 3. We have Rust alternatives for TLS. So theoretically, when you could build curl, quite a bit of Rust in there in the running code of binary blob, but no one is actually doing that for real. Well, again, no one. There are probably two somewhere. And then, of course, people have they do this and they insist on this because memory safetification. It's better to do everything in Rust because then we won't ever have any more security problems. But we don't have Rust alternatives for those over there. And really, we've had very few security problems related to these boxes. So it's not that we actually have alternatives for areas of code that in which we actually have security problems, which is kind of ironic. But I guess that's not their fault. It's more of just happens to be like that. So I just want I like this picture, but because it shows a little bit of a design thing of curl that you people maybe not always think about. So when you build curl, you get a weird subset of all of these different boxes, and the public API remains the same thing. So ideally, the outside world is not actually noticing much about which particular weird setup you're going with. So the future is actually, so yeah, I brought up that question, should we drop Hyper support? There's not a lot of love for Hyper in curl, and I think in general, for all of these Rust alternatives, there are open source different worlds, right? So the Rust components seem to be fairly well used in the Rust universe and Rust users, Rust projects, Rust people, not in C-related projects. So when we want to use Rust components in C projects, no C contributors want to work with the Rust libraries, and no Rust people want to work with the C project. So we end up with a situation where, yeah, we get two things, no one wants to actually make that work, and nobody, I'm saying nobody, very few seem to be actually interested in making it actually work. So in this case, we have this, I was funded to do this work, so I got paid to do it, so, but I got funded by ISRG to add the support because I thought it was a good idea. It could have been a good idea. Might still be a good idea. I'm not saying it, so I'm not ruling it out. So it could have been a cool thing so that you could build more Rust into curl. It could have been, can be a way to memory safetification. But it's been really slow. I guess I mean as a sort of a little bit of a personal failure because I didn't go all the way. I didn't make it happen all the way. So now we have, I think it's 16 test cases disabled. And we also disabled HTTP2 support with it because I had completely misunderstood the API. So basically, the way I did it apparently was the wrong way to do it. So it kind of worked, but not really. So we and nobody has even gone near Hyper, I guess, the last half year or something. Well, Stefan has because he has fixed some build problem because he refactored HTTP stuff, so he had to patch it up so that it actually works with the new way of doing things. But there's really no effort, and no one's sort of pushing, we want to see Hyper in curl soon. So when I brought that up on the mailing list a month ago, I then since talked with ISRG, me and Stefan did, and they say sure, they're fine with us dropping it if we want to. They also said that they might have an engineer working on it soon. But I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not in a hurry. I don't personally don't think we need to rip it out immediately and run with that. If they think they can clean it up, make it better, and we can get it into the architecture better, maybe get it into socket filter or sort of connection filter properly. Maybe that will be a better way, and it'll be less in the way and work better, and someone will work on it, and maybe if we can fix those 16 test cases, and it'll be everyone will be happy, we can do H2 with it, users will be happy, and then maybe we don't need to drop it. But so basically what I said, and I hope you to hear your opinions about it too, is that we can just delay the decision. We can wait half a year, we don't need to make the decision now. But if it doesn't improve, if no one is saying, I want to use this, I want to work on making it happen, then there's no point in carrying this with us anymore. Because it's just code no one is using. So we can wait and see. what's happening. Russell's is in a similar situation. Russell's is in a less grim situation because I think because the way we do different TLS backends is a little bit cleaner than Hyper is implemented. So the fact that Russell's is an experimental TLS backend, it doesn't hurt as much. Sure, they break their API every now and then, but we're stuck with their old API until they fix someone comes and fixes Russell's TLS, and then we bump to their latest version. That's also maybe fine. It's just code. No one builds curl to use Russell's, so it's not getting exercised. We don't ever get any reports. I mean, ideally, if people would use it, someone would find bugs in it, but apparently we have no bugs in that particular area of the code. It's a mystery, but
at least no memory bugs.
Exactly. Everything is. That's why there's no bugs. Everything is memory safe. So, and historically, there's been some challenges with. But I think it's pretty much up to par with most of the standards right now. It's 1.3 till and it supports IP addresses in certificates and everything. So I think for a lot of things it works mostly like other TLS backends in curl. There could potentially be a reason to say that it's not experimental anymore at some point. But I think I'm not sure we should do that until Russell's themselves say that they are at some 1.0 version of it. As long as they keep changing their API, we can't really say that it's. I don't even think they consider it non-experimental. They are going for. I hope I'm not telling the world too much now, but they are aiming for OpenSSL API compatibility as a sort of a little bit of a changing direction of their. I'm not involved in the project, so I can't talk about them how they work or really, but they've so far in their existence they have provided this FFI-C API that we are using. So we have a completely separate code in curl to interface Russell's and provide all the features for curl. But now I think they have the Russell's team, and again ISRG is involved in this as well. I think they have seen the same way we see it, that they have a lack of users. People aren't really using this in C projects. They're using it widely in Rust projects, but not in C projects. So the Rust FFI, and this is my interpretation and my reading of this, I might be completely wrong, but so they want to have a new way to get used by C projects. And I think again, we're here with these different worlds. We're C people and we're Rust people. They are over there, we're here. There's sort of that bridge in between. There's no one on the bridge. So one way they have figured it out, or they want to do the way I hear it, is that they want to then sneak it in by doing an open SSL API compatible thing, so that they could just ship Russell's instead of OpenSSL then with selected apps. And the suggestion we even got was that maybe then ideally down the road we could even remove the Russell's adoption in curl and just use the OpenSSL code we have already and just stick in Russell's in the back. That sounds very ambitious, and I'm sure that won't happen in a while, but still, that's what sort of their ambitions in that certainly in that direction. So if they would do that, and if they would actually manage to reach that level, it would be less work for us, right? Because that would, the same source code, just a different library underneath. The same way we support all the other OpenSSL forks of family, it would be significantly less work for us. If I imagine that at least short term, it will be more work, because I imagine they will have a hard time to actually support that API without a lot of, caveats and yes, but not in this case, or yes, almost, but. That's just me thinking about it, because it's a really complicated API to just support. Sort of, in particular, when you have an existing TLS library with a huge set of assumptions and history, and then a completely different library with a different set of assumptions and history, and then sort of, we should just emulate that one with their API. It's going to be a fun future. And then quiche, of course, as Stefan showed just now, it is performant and it works reasonably well. I mean, performance-wise, and it works pretty good in curl. I don't think we have any particular problems with it, but everyone else will have problems with it, primarily because it's only using boring SSL. And boring SSL, in case you don't know, they live their own world. They don't care about anyone else except Google-oriented projects. So basically, it's dangerous for anyone to go with boring for whatever you do. Okay, you can maybe buy that risk for your particular use cases, and I mean a lot of people do, right? So maybe that is okay, but it's going to be a risk for everyone who's involved. I also think that maybe there's also this. I'm not sure what Cloudflare wants with quiche, so I'm not sure where we're going. But that's just a speculation. I don't know. I mean, anyone can go anywhere with any of this. I don't think Cloudflare is using quiche in anything of their own.
I don't know.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't know either. I shouldn't really speculate too much. But anyway, this also might be something for us to go in to consider non-experimental at some point. But again, I don't think Cloudflare themselves consider this non-experimental. So, and before they do, I don't think we should. Right now, you can't even build quiche with the latest boring SSL because, of course, boring SSL is made for Google. They decided that we need to link with this C++ library. Yeah, all of a sudden, and
they claim that Cloudflare uses quiche.
Yeah, okay, cool. So Cloudflare is using quiche, but that's good because it gives them more attention to that. So, but anyway, so boring is pretty much they broke the quiche build because now they need C++ library, and boring quiche is not adapted to that. I guess it's not a big deal. You can just tweak the build scripts, but anyway, it just shows that it's a tough game to be using boring for anything if you're not Google.
It's constantly development.
It is, yeah, exactly. They don't even do releases with boring. It's just, you can get their latest from their Git. And it usually works, and I mean, they're attentive to details too. And the boring SSL people are also very attentive to curl issues with boring, so they tend to even come with PRs to us when they find issues with curl related to boring. So they're very good at keeping curl working with boring because they use curl with boring in Android and a lot of other things.
They even do PRs to OpenSSL.
Oh, they do that too. Yeah. So they're very active and they do a lot of good stuff, but they still focus on their use cases and they ship that for their products, and that's fine. We should all just be aware that's the reality. But so. We support a few libraries written in Rust, but there are of course a bunch of others that could be written in Rust, and we could have a lot more Rust. But I don't think we need to push for more Rust libraries anywhere until we actually see someone who wants to use this and wants to see it happen, work on it, and try it out in the real world. It feels like right now we have experiments to see. Sure, we can do it. We can do more memory safetification, but we sort of hang up the proof in the window, but no one is buying it. So for sale. We know we can offer them a discount, but it seems that nobody is actually buying this. So it seems like it's no point in pushing this further until we have more evidence that this is a worthwhile route forward, and people want to do it. I mean, because I could imagine splitting up even more core parts, like how I split out the HTTP part into hyper and HTTP native. We could do even more like that. And that, as I mentioned, I participated in a podcast that was released just days ago, and then I saw that sort of this could be a way to slowly transition into basically everything as Rust in the future, right? If you would just split everything out into different components, and you can rewrite every component in Rust. Ideally then, or ideally from a Rust point of view, in 20 years we could have just a tiny, tiny core of C, and everything else would be written in Rust. But I don't see that happening, and I don't see any desire from anyone actually wanting that to happen, apart from a few loudmouths out there, you know, opinionated people who would say, rewrite everything in Rust. So, therefore, I don't push for anything of this. I don't see any of this as a viable reality or opinion or option right now, even though it could be there if people actually want it. So that's what I wanted to say about Rust in curl. So there's not a lot of Rust in curl, and I don't see much Rust curl happening forward either. Any questions? More Rust. Memory safetification. That's the word.
I think you can look at it like this. It's another, like for example, Russell's FFI. It's another library. That it is written in Rust is really secondary for us. It's just a property of the implementation.
Yes.
So we treat it, I mean, as you said, like it's just another TLS backend which we support, and we have other backends which are maybe not so commonly used, or do they all have?
They are not. We have some that are not so commonly used, and
Yeah, so
in my
it's
next section I will talk about that as well. Yes.
Yeah. So and it's like, since that part of the curl is or has become pretty stable, I do not see an immediate need to remove Russells, for example.
No, to be fair, it's mostly Hyper that is a weight.
Yeah, Hyper is pretty, because it's very intrusive. The attempt was to replace as much of curl's HTTP handling as was feasible, I think.
Yeah.
So it's very much in there in the huge if-def branch alternate reality thing.
Yeah.
And in the current state where we can't use it for HTTP2, it's really not, it doesn't make sense to keep it in that state. It has to transition to support also HTTP2, then it might make sense, but as it is currently it's not. If ISRG says like they might have someone to work on that, we can probably say like we wait until the end of the year or autumn or something like, and then if nothing has happened by then, in my opinion, we should then remove Hyper from Burn, because it doesn't make sense, and if no one is willing to work on this to bring it into any sensible state, then why do it?
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty good stance to just say, let's just wait another 6 months and then reassess the situation. Has anything changed within this coming half year? I mean, if nothing changes, if everything is the same then, and then maybe we should just say, no, it's done. We can come back to this in a few years, or I mean, not now.
Yeah.
And things will be easier. We will be more light-footed, and we can do things easier without having to carry around Hyper.
You could add it to the release notes as a pending deprecation as of 2025 or something. The long date of that.
Yeah, but I would prefer to just give them some time first to actually see if they before we add it to the deprecation. But I agree. But I would like to just allow ISRG some time to maybe get something going. But then, if nothing happens, like by the time after the summer, maybe then add it as a deprecation, and then we say we remove it. I don't know, at some point early 2025.
Yeah.
So doing it now at least gives it more visibility, and if it's
Yeah, but I figured it would be also be a little bit, doing it now would be sort of not even expecting them to actually do something. That's what I just thought it would be bad optics just to say that sure we can wait for you to do something and at the same time mention it as deprecated. So that's the only reason why I think we could wait a little bit just to give them some
I mean, if we transition it to like what my idea would be to have it as an alternative H2 implementation in a filter like we do now for ng-HTTP2, right? And not try to replace the core handling as such that much. I think it would just then become an alternate implementation, hopefully, if the transition works. That would, for maintenance cost, would be much lower than for us.
Yeah. So basically it needs work to become more sort of, we need to squeeze it in better,
Yeah.
make a better puzzle piece out of
Yeah.
it. Now it's more of a inconvenient sort of mess.
So that we get one core HTTP implementation back and not
Yeah,
two.
exactly. Yeah. So it needs work one way or another
Yeah.
to be less in the way.
So you're suggesting though just limit the use of Hyper to HTTP2 then?
We could also use it for H1 with an H1 filter, but I would say the core setting up the request and parsing the response, that is basically, we do this in an HTTP1 way nowadays in curl, just because it was, but basically it's just, it's more like a core HTTP semantics handling for the protocol handler, like how to set up. Then you have the specific ones like chunk encoding in H1 or the framing in H2, and this is now done in connection filters or in client readers and writers, right? So it's more out of the core way pushed to these new mechanisms that we have. And you could say like we send also the H1 things with Hyper and parse the incoming response with Hyper if this is for safety reason would make sense. That's then the decision how we want to do this. But I would say like the core HTTP transfer handling in curl, that should be one implementation and not an if, def, this and that. My idea. I think because that's then to have two implementations there, it's too much maintenance in a protocol family that is very active.
So if is this work that you would do in the near future before ISRG says anything, or if ISRG says, well, yeah, we want to keep it, we're going to give some resources at that point, you would bite the bullet and then fit it in better?
Yeah, I guess their work would more or less imply a little bit of what Stefan is talking about. So basically, if we would to fix Hyper, I think there are a few things. Maybe I shouldn't say fix Hyper because Hyper works fine as a library. I mean the adaptation for Hyper in curl. That's what I'm talking about. So to fix that, I think we need to get a few things done, and whoever is going to do that, some of those things needs to get done. Right. That is probably part of what Stefan is talking about. Is probably one of those steps that needs to be done, so that Hyper becomes a better citizen in the curl backend map.
I mean, even if they fix the test cases, if we still can't do HTTP2 with it, I don't see anyone ever using it.
No. So I agree. HTTP2 is certainly if that's one part. So we need those test cases and H2 fixed. When we can say that we don't disable any tests apart from some that we disable anyway.
Yeah.
Because it is an unfortunate thing that building curl with Hyper will always be slightly less feature-wise than curl without Hyper, because Hyper is an opinionated library, so we can't use it for a lot of things. Features that we have in curl that is just impossible to do with Hyper. And we already have them disabled apart from those 16 test cases. So it's already a sort of maybe a lesser solution for users. So I agree, we can switch off even more because that would just make it completely useless for users. So no one will use it if it's sort of useless.
Then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I
Food.
do think there's another one problem. If Russells do become an OpenSSL API compatible API, which I don't think they will, but assuming they do, that means we're going to have yet another layer if def soup in OpenSSL.c.
Yes.
I think we at some point need to be thinking about OpenSSL-common.c and then have one per
I agree, and
compatible.
I think that's going to be inevitable at some point because they're all sort of digressing
Yeah.
slowly, right?
Because
So
it's
at
really
some
hard to
point
work
they're
with
going.
that right now.
I mean, we already actually have a slight problem with quick TLS and OpenSSL now overusing the same function names for different things. So, and I think that is going to be more of a problem in the future when they're sort of going in different directions. So yes, I agree that saying that it'll simplify things for us might not be quite true, but on the other hand, maybe adding if-defs to the maze is also still slightly
Yeah, that
easier
was
than
a-
having
Probably easier, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
Easier,
but I
it's,
agree that I foresee a future when we need to do something about supporting I don't know how many different libraries within the same source file that they're all slightly different.
There was a little bit of a middle finger by OpenSSL
To that function name, yes.
to add a function from the rejected PR for a different purpose. So
Yeah,
everyone who detects
I think
if
that
the
was
patch is present
kind
or
of,
not falls
yeah.
down a cliff. That
Mm.
was not perceived as very funny.
I was not involved in
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm not saying anything personal.
I
I'm just
personally duck
Yeah.
away from any responsibility.
no, I'm not trying to.
Just saying.